A.C.E.S Junkyard Podcast, redefining role warfare, one pug drop at a time.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Armored Combat Escalation Service Podcast, episode 50, your number one voted MWO and Battletech podcast, coming to you live from the command section of the warship Sabercat. Today is March 7th, 2017. I am your host Brandon, also known as Cattra, Kell, and with me today is Kron. How's it going?
Pretty good. Can't complain. Or I could complain, but there's no need at this point.
No need yet. You'll complain later on in the episode.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that goes without saying.
Obviously. So, it's been a little while. It's been about a month since our last podcast, and if we finally have enough stuff that we can sit down, I think, and actually have a pretty good podcast instead of just touching about two subjects and then calling it an episode. So, we might as well hop right into it. A quick little somewhat update for the people who backed the Battletech game by A.C.E.S. There's going to be a slight delay in the beta. I take it you read about this, Kron?
Yes, I received the email earlier today. I read through it. Basically, they've had some minor hiccups that have delayed the beta, or beta, depending on how you pronounce and where you are. And so that's being pushed back. They aren't exactly sure when they'll launch it, but they are hoping to do it sometime this spring. They did say that this pushback is going to affect the final release date. Initially, they were looking for early summer. Now they're looking for more towards a late summer, possibly a fall release for A.C.E.S's Battletech game, which I'm not too surprised by this. We know, during development for any type of game, regardless if it's kickstarted, if it's, made by a AAA developer, things happen, delays happen. And oftentimes people complain when a game's delayed, but they'll also complain when a game's released and it's not in a unfinished state. So I prefer actually when a game gets delayed because
Yeah.
they're admitting, hey, we ran into some issues. We have to make corrections before we release even just the beta for you. So just give us some time. We'll get things sorted out and let you know how things develop. I'm all for that. I'm glad that HBS is being open and transparent about it and saying, yeah, there's hiccups. We've got to make changes, and it's not just going to affect this. It's going to affect this further on. So just letting you know and giving you the heads up. So kudos to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I just basically wanted to touch up on basically almost what you said there. I'd much rather, and I think especially a studio like HBS is very lucky in the situation where they're in, where they don't have to cut content or do shortcuts when an issue like this comes up to meet a date. They just basically openly say, hey, the Unity engine pushed an update. The update was going to bring stability to the game, so we thought we should probably update our engine, but turns out some other things in the update broke the game, so we're going to fix it. We're going to have to push it back a little bit, but the result of this will be a much stable and better game when it's actually completed. And again, just being open and transparent with this sort of thing, I think a lot of people are not going to get, well, Some people are still going to get upset, of course, but I think a lot of people, for the most part, understand. And you don't run into, again, like I said, HBS is lucky where they don't have a publisher or someone breathing down their neck saying you need to meet this date or you need to meet this target. So you got to do something in order to make this happen still, which
Yeah.
usually for a lot of studios results in cut content or unfinished content or just not as good of a final product at the end of the
Huge
day.
day one patches.
Yeah. So, I mean, on one hand, it kind of sucks because, hey, we're all kind of looking forward to the beta coming up in, I think it was next month? Something like that?
It was
Close to?
the beta was initially supposed to be sometime this March,
Yeah.
but
Or they were saying like
no.
March, maybe into the run over month. Basically, we're going to get word pretty soon if we were going to have it or not, is basically what it came down to.
I fully expect us not to get it now until April, and I'm totally okay with that. I'd rather them give us something that's stable that we can actually do good testing in and get a good feel of, rather than give us something that's clunky and just broken. Because while you
Or
can still test certain things and get an idea, there's going to be those people that are going to scream to high heavens that it's unstable, that there are major issues with it that are not that they are already aware of, and are going to thus, drown out the real problems of, UI bugs, uh, damage bugs, graphical glitches, things that really the beta's there to test, not something with the Unity engine which they're already aware of and already making efforts to deal with. So
I also feel like this is going to be a slight side tangent as well. But I feel like with a lot of betas and stuff like that, I think people are a little bit spoiled in what betas have somewhat become. I guess in the past year or two, or at least from my personal standpoint, a lot of betas have become more or less free play weeks, like 2 weeks before the game comes out. It's not a real beta, but rather just a I don't know how to say this probably other than like a promotional
yes,
playtime.
I would definitely agree with that. And we've been seeing this a lot with the big AAA developers and
Yes,
publishers.
I think
The
Battlefield
be-
1
yeah,
was the most recent one that I felt like it's the beta, quote unquote, to find quote unquote bug fixes or bug errors was I think 2 or 3 weeks before release.
yeah, it was like two
Um,
weeks before release, and
I mean, yes, some bugs will be fixed in that time, obviously, but that to me screams more play our game, and if you like it, well, it's coming out in 2 weeks, so give us $80 plus season pass.
yeah,
Um,
and it's there to drum up hype. It's to
yeah,
convince all those people of, hey, look what we've got here, something new and shiny. Look at it jangle. Look at it jangle. Look at it sparkle.
where with the HBS BattleTech, it really does. If I remember correctly, they're testing multiplayer and only a couple missions in the single player first. Well, they're
Yeah,
still. It's going to be an actual quote unquote beta. So just a heads up for people who are listening, it's not going to be the full thing, obviously. And I guess I should also, just for full disclosure, like I've given HBS like $600 to $700 of my money. So I'm just gonna get that out of the way before I get called like a shill because I do have interest in the final product. Yes. But I feel like that the actual way that they're doing the quote unquote beta is like when I did, or I used to when I was a little younger, beta test some other online games. And this feels more like in that direction where here's 2 maps, perform, like, just try to break the game. And then the game's still, quote unquote, release date is like a year away. But yeah, I don't know. Just, I guess, to end this rambling, beta delayed. BattleTech, the game itself, is being pushed back probably for a little bit, mainly due to the engine buckling under some new updates. But the end result is going to be better stability and a better game.
yeah. Uh,
Perfect.
that being said, did you order your BattleTech Stein and Solaris 7 coaster set?
I unfortunately did not. The reason why is because I've been too busy flipping switches for profit. um, no, I completely actually forgot about it. I wanted to, but another issue with that sort of stuff is the U.S. to Canadian dollar is not great. For example, a friend of mine in the States recently picked up, or I should say, I gave him the money to pick up the two BattleTech novels, the one that they're printing now, which has to deal with Clan Wolverine. That's the print on demand, as well as he managed to snag a copy of the one that was at Gen Con 2 years ago, I think, now, something like that.
Um, yeah, I think it's about 2 years now.
Yeah, so just to put in perspective, I sent about 50 Canadian dollars down to my friend in the States um, to get these items, because even though it's 50 Canadian dollars to buy them and ship them to Canada, in order to get them sent through an actual official way, aside from him going to a place, picking them up physically, putting them in a box and mailing them to me with tracking, to purchase it, quote unquote, from a site like Barnes and Nobles or something like that, would have been almost 100. Mainly because the outrageous amount of shipping and insurance and stuff like that on books.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, and the conversion. So, yeah, it's you're looking at almost doubling. If I wanted to go in on a Stein, I really actually wanted the coasters. The coasters were pretty sweet. But I basically take that price, double it, and add another $25 for shipping and handling. It just gets a little bit ridiculous for Canadians.
Yeah. Well, at least they made it on these.
Yes,
The
that's the
campaign
thing.
was
The
successful.
people that are getting them, I'm very happy that they're being done. It just again, it shows that the brand itself is still very much alive and well.
Yeah.
In general,
And,
like,
and I think the reason that the first campaign didn't the first two things for the campaign, the Atlas resin statue, uh, the reason that didn't make it, it was the timing of the release. I mean, it's right around Christmas, and people are already spending money on other things. They may not be able to, justify the extra cost there. Some people might have been able to and say, hey, it's a Christmas gift to myself or to the BattleTech fan in my family or a circle of friends. But it's one of those awkward times where, coming out with something and then saying, hey, if we don't, this is all based on if we meet the goal. If we don't meet the goal, then it's not going to happen. That's kind of difficult to do. If you're trying to plan it as a gift, and if it doesn't make the goal, well, now you're out the gift and it's, you get your money back, but you're left scrambling. And so I think the timing really hurt the initial startup for the Battletech gear campaigns, but this one, you know came in at a good time for it, and I'm glad to see that it succeeded. I'm very excited to see what comes next for them.
yeah, me again, some of the products, depending on what it is, I would very much be interested in picking up, assuming the price is there. Like, I don't mind spending like $50 on a nice T-shirt or something like that, but coasters for 40 some dollars doesn't. It's kind of iffy for me.
Yeah. So, all right. So moving on, we had our February patch. Came in on February the 21st. Not a overly large patch in terms of what we've seen in the past, mainly
Well,
because,
in terms of content, it wasn't big,
yeah,
but
in terms
there
of
is a
con.
ton of changes and fixes and bug issues.
Yeah, but
But as far as new content goes, of course, we had the new mech, the Supernova, finally drop. I've gotten to play twice in it, so I can't really give a great overview. But it's not too bad. I enjoy it.
I've talked to a number of people that have been playing theirs, and the consensus seems to be that the Supernova is fun and in a good overall mech, but it's not something to necessarily buy as an exclusive if you are looking if you've only got the MC or the C bills when this finally releases for MC and C bills to buy, a few mechs. This isn't one that you necessarily need to have. It does things better than some chassis, but it's not something, jump up buy now type. Um, the Kodiak, it seems to be the consensus is that the Kodiak and the Marauder 2C both outperform it,
Yeah.
but it does do a little bit better than the Direwolf does. Uh, the thing I've been noticing with it is that the builds that people have been running on it have been pretty much lackluster in terms of variety. It's either all laser vomit, given that you know some of the variants are only energy configuration, so it goes without saying that they're going to have heavy laser builds on them. The few that don't that actually have other hard points such as missile hard points, uh, most people are just loading up with SRMs and using this to brawl in. The big winner for this pack really seems to have been the hero, the that's the
With the
boiler.
two ballistic hard points, one on each arm,
Yeah,
right?
most people I've been seeing that is it's dual Gauss, dual ER PPC, which is the go-to meta. PPC Gauss meta right now is the thing to have. You can
Yeah.
just put so much damage onto someone in a pinpoint firing ability. It's it's actually kind of disgusting, and we've talked about this before that it almost breaks the game. It almost makes it not enjoyable to play when you're taking a 60 to 70 point strike due to that. The Direwolf, we had them put in a specific thing that the Direwolf couldn't fire off more than uh, couldn't fire off its two PPCs and its two Gauss rifles at the same time. But the Supernova, it seems, doesn't suffer from that. So um, maybe it does, and people have just gotten so good at firing them quickly enough one after the other that it's no longer noticeable, but
I'm pretty sure there's macros as well for that.
yeah,
So
and it's bad. I've seen enough. I saw one of our aces members a couple nights ago was running the Brawler Atlas on Mining Collective, and we started pushing up and over a ramp to hit the medium lance on the other side, and the supernova that was sitting at the back of the map popped him in the side torso and completely stripped it, and got a crit on the autocannon. So took that out. So basically he lost half of his mech in a single salvo, and it that shouldn't be happening, and it constantly does, whether it's the Gauss PPC meta or if it's the laser vomit meta. It's something that PGI needs to address, and we've stressed this previously, and we've said it time and time again, and people in the community have been saying it over and over and over that they need to do something about it because it's killing this game, and it doesn't seem to nothing seems to be really happening about it. So I'm hoping that they're working on new solutions, but I'm honestly very concerned about it because we talked to, it's not just the Supernova, the Marauder 2C.
no, that's another big
The
one. Like
Yeah,
that's a gentleman that I know actually at work who plays the game. And that's what he pilots almost exclusively because he loves it. It's such a he basically talks about how it's so tanky, and you can just load up on energy and ballistic. And
And we've seen the meta in the Kodiaks shift over to Gauss PPC as well. After they toned down the Kodiak 3's autocannon ability, people switched over to Gauss and PPCs, and that's where it's at.
Well, I mean, also to play devil's advocate slightly, no matter what PGI does, they're always going to chase the meta. Someone's always going to crunch the numbers and come up with the best build and stuff like that. But I do think the biggest thing that I've noticed is just the sheer amount of power that you can get out of Alpha Strikes, as it is now, compared to if you go back and watch some old MWO videos from, say, 3.5 years ago, slightly, the game in general was much slower. Your huge quote-unquote alpha builds and your quote-unquote danger builds was the Catapult K2 with the dual Gauss build in the side torsos. The if I remember correctly, give me a second here. Of course, you had the Dragon
the six PPC Stalker, which
yep.
that
That didn't really see much play in if we're talking like huge meta stuff.
Yeah.
You saw a lot more of Victors. You saw a lot more of Centurions. You saw a lot more of those sort of mechs. Rather than these, and the thing is, like, people are going to say, well, those were still huge Alpha Strike mechs. They were, but they were all varied. I guess the Highlander and the Victor kind of did the same thing, somewhat. 2 PPCs, 2 AC5s, or 2 PPCs and a Gauss rifle, kind of the same. I agree, but I mean, your Centurion was pure SRM build. And your other mechs were they were still either medium laser spam, like the Hunchback, and like it was varied. It wasn't just the same 2 weapons, I guess, is what I'm trying to come to say.
Yeah. This has always been an issue for not just BattleTech games, but MechWarrior games. Across the board, the boating issue has always been there and has always plagued these games. And everyone's tried different solutions to deal with it. And some have met with some success, others have been complete failures. Right now, PGI needs to throw something new in there to try to deal with it, because it's just it's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. And the energy draw system, initially we thought that might be promising, but that turned out to be not exactly applicable. It caused more problems than it seemed to solve. But so I'm really hoping that they've got a couple of their development team members working on this issue and trying to figure out how do we stop people from taking these huge high alpha damage builds, or these single weapon system boat builds, or even just the dual weapon system boat builds. And I'm honestly thinking it needs to get addressed sooner rather than later.
The only issue with that, and once again, I'm going to play somewhat devil's advocate. The only way that I foresee, if I can speak English today, the only way that I foresee something like this being really, really taken care of and pushed out of the way is doing something like MechWarrior 4. And by that I mean have your actual sized slots on hard points for the mechs. So an arm, it might be able to take an energy, a ballistic, and a missile, but all of those are going to take up the crit, like different sized ones are going to take up the crit slots in that area, and you're going to have to play more or less puzzle pieces again. That is the only way that I can see, and still allow a good amount of customization, mind you, a big crackdown on these type of builds. And I know a lot of people really hated, or at least at the time, really hated MechWarrior 4 because of that. So it's kind of I don't want to say catch-22, but it's sort of like a rock and a hard place scenario. Where do we limit the amount of customization by implementing more strict hardpoints and hardpoint systems in customization? Or do we allow this to continue and people to get upset and mad?
Well,
Uh,
my suggestion has still goes back to, if you really are looking for something to change to deal with this, it's gotta be the easiest one that I see for the fix is is eliminating the pinpoint ability. Uh, these weapons we know from BattleTech lore, all the fluff, are not supposed to be this accurate. Mech warriors are a highly skilled and highly accurate mech warrior is the exception, not the rule. Guys like Kai Allard Liao, Phelan Kell, even Victor Steiner Davian to an extent. These guys are the elite of the elite when they're placing their shots. It's the regular mech warrior, be he a member of a house unit or a mercenary unit, is not placing shots as easily as people do in MWO. The pinpoint accuracy issue is the thing that I think if needs to be addressed and needs to be changed. Uh, I think the if you tone down the pinpoint accuracy or really hamper it, increase weapon spread, you'll you'll have a better game. Time to kill is going to go up, way up. Uh, the heavy alphas are only going to work when you're reasonably close. Even things, if you keep it to the dual peeps, dual Gauss meta, you're still having a chance that you're not going to hit exactly where you're aiming for with both sets of weapons. You might only land one PPC and it might not be on the area that you're aiming for, and the Gauss shots might both go you know either which way. So I think it's got to be something to do with the pinpoint issue. If you're not going to do an energy draw system and you're not going to rework the heat system to take into account these types of things, then it's got to be the accuracy. The accuracy needs to get toned down.
yes. Or again, I agree. Accuracy is probably the biggest issue coming out of this. But also maybe applying more penalties for the damage you accumulate. Um, I
Except
guess
except that's not going to hurt people that
I
are
was about to say
taking
that's not
these.
going to really
Yeah.
hurt the high alpha long range builds.
Yeah. And it's
So
not
I guess
even the brawlers. It's not going to help them or hamper them all that much. It's not going to stop them from taking a build like that because they're going to go in and basically they're going to YOLO kamikaze in and say, I'm going to just fire off as much as I can, do as much damage as I can, and then go down. And the guy that's coming in behind me on my team is going to do the exact same thing. And it's just going to be this meat grinder effect. And that might be fun for the first and initial plays, but after a while people are just going to get bored of that. It's going to be just not fun and you're going to be back in the same boat. So you need to keep combat variable. You need to have surprises, things. And I honestly think the only way to solve this is to deal with the pinpoint accuracy of weaponry in this game. The reason they developed things like the LBX autocannons, the shotgun autocannon, it was because weapons are inherently inaccurate in BattleTech. The reason that you are firing, a basically a cluster round instead of a solid slug was because it gave you a higher chance of hitting overall. You used it against fast moving targets like light mechs, against fast moving vehicles, against aerospace fighters because it gave you a higher chance of dealing damage. And here, people don't take LBX autocans because everything's now pinpoint. you take an Ultra or you take a regular autocannon instead of an LBX because you need to concentrate damage. And so it's basically eliminated those weapons from the game for the most part. So, you know, as I said before, it's got to be the pinpoint accuracy. It's got to get toned out. You have to. I don't know if you do it through reticle bloom, if you do it through the gyro suggestion that I've made numerous times, or you do it through do it through something else. But it's got to be done. Um, I know looking at the stuff for the HBS BattleTech game, because they're sticking much closer to tabletop. You see on the turns that they're showing that weapons are inaccurate. They're having numerous misses and they're having strikes occur that weren't exactly planned. We saw it in the initial footage when they showed the first demo build for
I
it,
was gonna
and they
say
had
if anyone's had the chance to play the demo build, this is very much true because it's all based on dice. Well, I want to say
yeah,
dice roll more or less, but yeah, missing unless you have a much higher skilled pilot, not what is it, 4 or 5 green, but if you have someone that's like a 2-3 veteran,
yeah,
for pilot gunnery, like you're going to hit a lot more than the green pilot. But when you first start out, your pilots miss even small lasers in the back. Like
yeah,
it's still.
and
Uh,
and that there you've got dice rolls being made, and that takes into account what's said in the fluff that these weapon systems are inherently inaccurate. You it's not because you can't put the crosshair on target. You are putting crosshair on target. The weapons are just not responding necessarily the way you want because you are in a gigantic, you know, machine that has to deal with, fire that it's taking, Meyermer bundles that are not responding correctly, actuators that are flexing. There's a whole lot of different things that are occurring here, and in MechWarrior Online, all that basically has been hand waved away. All the one of the biggest things, and I've talked about this before, the gyro is one of the most crucial components for a mech. And in MWO, other than it showing up in the mech lab, it has no it has absolutely no place in this game. It does nothing for the mech. Even having it take up critical space has no purpose in this game because nothing happens if you take a hit to it. You can't take a hit to it because there's no registration for it. So it's it's just this arbitrary placeholder in MWO when it's supposed to be a crucial piece of equipment. So
I wonder.
PGI needs to deal. PGI basically needs to do something, and they need to start doing it quickly because it's getting to the point where this game is really losing its fun factor for a lot of people, including myself.
I wonder, building on that gyro theory, and we've talked about this before, even going way back to the NG podcast. But what about? I wonder how much of a difference in terms of speed of game and the alpha builds and everything like that, if you once again desynced the torso spin and torso speeds from the engine size. Because then the mechs that are taking these small engines in order to
Well,
put
that's
big
already
loads.
being done. If
Yes.
you read the PTS
Yes.
notification, since we've kind of hammered on the biggest change for the February patch. I mean, the the bug fixes and everything like that were changed are somewhat numerous, but nothing outstanding that really deserves comment. The PTS that's gone up, though, this second phase of it, we do see a decoupling of engine size to mobility, and mobility is now scaling due to total weight of a mech rather than to engine size, which I'm personally okay with because seeing
Well,
Kodiaks and other huge battle mechs, assault mechs that are moving like light
Well,
heavy
it's
mechs
not
or
even
medium
them
mechs.
moving in terms of speed. It's being able to twist so
Yeah,
quickly. And that's what I mean. Like if these big, and I'll be interested because I gotta still play on the PTS this time because I missed the last one and I want to get on this one because I want to see how much of a difference it will make when these big Alpha Strike builds can't just basically set their mouse sensitivity to the highest and just spin their mouse around and
yeah,
instantly snap onto people when it actually takes time for them to torso rotate, and so it allows maybe even medium, heavy, and light mechs to actually stay out of their line of sight, actually creating threat more or less. I wonder how that will go, and I'd be very interested to see the results of that. So
yeah,
I want to take part this time. I want to
yeah.
see.
I will say this second part of the PTS is much better thought out than the first one. Uh, the first PTS that put up the first skill tree build, uh, pretty much the consensus across the community was while it was had good ideas and good bones, the a number of the details were really poorly done. Particularly the economy of it, the just the costs in terms of C bills and XP to unlock and then shuffle your skill points to and then repurchase was just too prohibitive, not just
Yeah.
for new players but for veteran players.
Yeah,
uh
it was. I will agree with you there. That was a ridiculous amount of the economy
yeah,
being messed up. I've seen a lot of posts, and these are what I agree with. Don't charge anything to set points. Charge a fee, be it C bill or MC, to reset your skill tree. But
yeah,
then people are arguing that, oh well, that doesn't allow people to really like, I guess, like play around with or experiment with builds, which I guess is true. But don't make it like an exorbitant fee. Be like a million C bills, for example, to completely reset your tree, but it doesn't cost anything to reset nodes.
yeah. The second pass of it though seems to be a lot more friendly for the economy. I've gone on, I've checked it out. It's uh, much more toned down in terms of the costs. Some of the costs were completely eliminated, which is very helpful. I think this version it gives people who have a abundance of C bills something to spend them on to when all's said and done and they've maxed out everything in their mech labs for every mech. They can't figure out, okay, what do I spend C bills on now? Now they have something where they can sink some C bills in. They can go back through and go, okay, I played my Centurion AL, in this configuration using these nodes. I want to go back through and reset everything on this so that I can play it now this way. And I've got the C bills, I can do that. But at the same time, for newer players, it's not because it's more based on how many nodes they've already unlocked and applied points to. Uh, it's not as cost prohibitive to them if they don't have a lot of C bills. So the economy is much better. I like the layout also of the skill trees better now. The weapons branch of the you know I in one sense having a gigantic weapons tree is kind of hard to find things on, but at the same time it forces people to not specialize as much. It forces them to take other things in the tree and diversify a little bit more. So I'm okay with it for the most part. The one big change that I'm not really liking is actually to the consumables auxiliary branch. Uh, I like the fact that I can take more than one UAV. Uh, but the taking of more than one artillery or airstrike, I I'm having a little bit of an issue with that. One, because I don't think anyone's going, if you've got everyone on your team taking 2 artillery or 2 airstrikes, there's no way in a 15-minute match everyone is going to be able to do 2 strikes. It's not going to happen.
Well, and not
With
only
the,
that, it's just going to become obnoxious. Like
yeah,
already having
and we had that
12.
issue, a couple like
Yeah,
2 years ago.
I was gonna say like having 12 already is obnoxious. How going up to 24 on a single team, you won't. I don't even think you would see combat. At certain matches, I don't think you would. You'd still see combat, but I don't think it would be. It would just be going in and finishing people off.
But that said, having more consumable slots opens it up to having more consumables. And this is something we've talked about before, both here on the ACES podcast. NGNG's talked about it on their podcast. I know the Marine Mech guys have talked about it on their casts. PGI should have implemented more consumables by this point. There should have been, a smoke, you know, screen consumable. There should have been a seismic sensor consumable. There should have been, false reading, an ECM type of like consumable, something that is different than just UAV, artillery, and cool shot. We've had the same 3 consumables now since almost the beginning of the game, and you would have thought by this point in time we would have seen other things have been be implemented, especially considering the community's been asking for it and been giving a lot of good suggestions about it, and yet it hasn't happened. And I'm
Now,
hoping that with adding, up where you can carry up to 6 different consumables, that this heralds the potential for new consumables being added in, having much like the UAV, having a deployable seismic sensor so that you can put it on a corner and then move away from it and have basically a little landmine sitting there that tells you that doesn't necessarily do damage, but just gives you a sensor sweep for seismic, or just a regular sensor sweep there, or
or even
have
just
a
like a one time, if something falls into range, it just gives us a one time pop up or something like that.
yeah, or have a smoke screen where somewhat like the artillery barrage. You put your cursor, your HUD over whatever it is you're going to shoot at. You hit your smoke screen button. It sends out a little trigger to spotting marker for the artillery. Artillery drops smoke shells instead of explosive shells. You've now got a smoke screen up. You can advance without too much worry, or know the opposing team is forced to change to heat vision in order to try to see through it.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Are you saying this game has heat vision?
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry. I'm just
or
being.
or
It's a vision I've never seen anyone actually.
yeah,
I use
and
night
we've
vision
talked
during
about
the day, and I use regular vision the rest of the time. Like it's.
yeah. So there's a lot of things there that need to be done. I do know they released a thing about the cool shots being the bonus for the cool shots are going to be toned down. Uh, the boost to them, the boost that they provide is only going to be 25% rather than 50%. And the enhanced cool shot is only going to be 50% rather than 100%. So that helps even that out a little bit, but it's it it's the fact that you're giving us 6 different consumable slots, 2 basically that go to UAVs, 2 that go to cool shots, and 2 that go to artillery strikes. At this point, why don't we have other consumables that we could potentially use? Things that bring in that, information warfare, the ECM capabilities, visual changes like the smoke screen, visual camouflage in that sense. I don't understand why it's taken so long for PGI to implement something like that, and the fact that it still hasn't been implemented, it's mind-boggling to me.
Now I'm gonna play. I'm gonna suggest an evil thing here. would you be openly opposed to consumables being completely removed?
No, I would not be opposed to it. I don't think enough of the player base utilize consumables that it would affect play enough to be too noticeable. Of course, you're going to have teams. Organized groups are going to probably hit the hardest by it, but the majority of players are not going to really notice the change. Uh, the guys that are running the heavy meta builds that rely on cool shots, yeah, they're going to be affected. The teams that they don't take scout mechs to do the scouting for us for them because they rely entirely on UAVs, they're going to be affected by it. But the majority of players in this game, no, I don't think they would be affected by the complete removal of consumables.
It's just a thought that I've had recently that I wonder how much cool shots specifically. I wonder how much of a change it would have on the game in terms of how effective some builds are.
I'll say this: I rarely see tier 1 players not taking cool shots on energy builds.
Well, yeah, there's no reason. All my mechs, I can tell you right now, every single mech, both slots are taken by cool shots.
Yeah.
The ones that I can get 3 on, cool shots UAV. There's really not a good reason not to take cool shots.
So
I've often pondered myself what it would be like to go back pre consumables and see how things go.
But as I said, I want to see new consumables put in. I think we're owed it by this point that the community has suggested time and time and time again new consumables and given good examples of it, and there has seemed to be no traction upon this. So it's something PGI needs to get working on. The rest of the PTS, though, a lot of, I'm really liking the second phase of it. I'm kind of glad that they delayed implementation of the skill tree because this, the first phase of the PTS showed that there were some real issues with the skill trees changes. So I'm glad that they held off on implementing the skill tree in order to do another phase of the PTS. So hopefully, maybe we'll see a third phase. I don't think so. I think the second phase does a pretty decent job of making good changes and making the skill tree kind of what we were hoping it would be. So maybe we'll see the skill tree get implemented in April instead of March.
Again, it's hard to say how good it is until it does go on grand scale, because again, we run into the issue where not a whole lot of people are playing PTS.
That's true.
So it's really hard to say, and I think once again, incentives to play PTS would be interesting. But I do hope that if there are issues that arise in this next PTS, that they continue with the PTSs and listening to what the community says and taking that feedback and seeing what they can and cannot do. And I hope that this continues, more or less, this process that they've started to build up upon what they have with what works, what doesn't work, taking it back, seeing what they can do to improve it, bringing it back out, have the community like this cycle, I guess, is really good, and it can be great. So another, I just want to bring back to the patch on last Tuesday, February 28th, I mean,
21st.
Or 21st, sorry.
Yeah, it's
2
been
weeks
2
ago.
weeks.
3 weeks, technically, or whatever. Another thing that came out that we forgot to touch upon was that the loyalty mechs are available in the shop as well. And the reason I bring this up is that the quote-unquote top-tier summoner build, aka best mech in the game, is now actually available to the public, and they don't require the loyalty mech to make it.
I'm kind of surprised throwing that in the gift store. I I don't like it when they throw something only into the gift store. If you're gonna release it, throw it into the gift store and also throw it into the game for MC, because
Yes. Well, that's
there's
something we've
no
brought up
reason not
multiple
to.
times as well, or at least I've brought up multiple
Yes, we've
times
talked about it.
because it's really something that I've been iffy about, or I shouldn't say iffy about, but it's been something that's been a personal pet peeve due to my investment into MC.
Yeah. So I never understand when they do this, why they do it. I mean, people have MC, they want to buy the mech. You know, they're not going to go to the gift store if they've got the MC sitting there. And people that don't have the MC that sitting there that want the mech are going to go to the gift store, or they're going to buy MC to buy the mech. So having it only there for real money in the gift store makes no sense on any economic scale to me. So I have no idea what they're thinking, what their marketing people are thinking. Yeah, it's mind-boggling why they do that. But yes, those all the loyalty mechs for this latest year 3 pass of Mech Warrior Online's anniversary are now in the gift store. So we're talking the Summoner, we're talking the Hellringer, uh, the Stalker, the Cataphract. There's what else?
There's a good number of them. I don't have them
Yeah,
all
there was.
listed
I
down
think there
here,
were
but
like 6 this
yeah.
time around, and they they were all somewhat decent. The Cataphract was actually surprisingly well received by many Inner pilots, but really the big winner seemed to be the Summoner. Oh, I remember the loser of it was the Blackjack. That suckers. That new variant of the Blackjack is just terrible. So
Yeah. Let's talk about. Let's move on to the piece, the grand finale, the piece of basically the finally, the Resistance heroes are getting hero mechs.
yeah,
Finally.
yeah, we've got the announcement of the Resistance Heroes Inner Sphere collection. The Wolfhound is Grinner. The Crab is Florentine. The Black Knight is Partisan. The Mauler is Knockout. The Panther is Katana Cat. The Enforcer is Gilly. The Grasshopper is Mjolnir. And the Zeus is Skokomish. The Urban Mech is K9. And the King Crab is Kaiju. And these are almost all of them are based on actual canon variants of mechs in BattleTech that are piloted by somewhat noteworthy uh, mech warriors. Grinner, the Wolfhound, was the ride of Phelan Kell, the son of Morgan Kell of the Kell Hounds. Uh, the Crab
Are we going to do a whole lineage thing? Because then we can go
No, we
into
don't.
who's
We don't
brother
have
of
the time.
Patrick Kell, who is son of.
Okay, you need to stop. Okay. The Mauler is piloted by Zach Miles Hawkins, who who is the same Captain Hawkins if from the uh, BattleTech animated series. So he's
AKA the best series ever made.
uh, so there's a bunch of good mechs here. The thing,
And to build on top of that, there's a bunch of Easter eggs in a lot of these mechs as
yes.
well,
One
which
of
is
my
what makes
favorite
them great.
things actually is the King Crab paint job. The hero camouflage for it is actually the uh, paint scheme that we first saw when we saw the concept art for the King Crab. And
Yes.
so I'm glad to see that make it into the game. I think that's that's absolutely phenomenal to see that. The Urban Mech is getting a police light bar on top of its little trash can head,
Which will
and we've
function.
yes, and we've been told it will function somehow. They still have to figure out how it will, if it's going to. I've seen people suggest that it be triggered just like the weapon hatches or the claws on the king crab using.
Or you could use the light dimmer, because for people that don't remember, you can dim the lights and turn your lights off in your cockpit.
Yeah. Well, I mean to send it on and off just like a regular,
Yes.
a real police bar, to hit that button to turn it on. I've also seen people suggest that it be triggered like a war horn, and that there'd be a
Oh, when you get a kill, it goes off. That would
yeah.
be pretty slick.
So that that'd be interesting. So some neat little things here and there. Uh, if you remember to note, if you're looking at the heroes purchase page, the the art that's being shown there is only to show off the camouflage paint schemes. It's not there to show the weapon configurations. Those uh, those have not been fully 3D modeled yet. So when you see some of these, like the grasshopper is supposed to have a Gauss rifle in one of its arms, and you look at that grasshopper picture and you go, those are both energy hardpoints in the arm. So that's not a Gauss rifle.
Well, I
There's a
think the
reason.
biggest example of that as well is the Black Knight variant, which actually got changed from the original one,
Yeah.
to reflect more the MechWarrior 4 variant.
Yeah, there were some changes made initially to some of the loadouts for these hero mechs. Most notably the Enforcer and the Black Knight. The Black Knight probably is the bigger change. Initially, the Black Knight was going to have two missile hard points in the same arm. I believe it's the left arm, and enough people cried out about it that they ditched one of the missile hardpoints and put a ballistic hardpoint in there, citing that in the fluff, this Black Knight is supposed to have a hatchet and triple strength Myomer muscles in order to give it a close quarter melee ability. But because that's not in MWO, they were going to put missile hardpoints in there to take up the weight. One of those is being ditched for a ballistic hard point, and Gauss rifles being thrown in there. So it is similar to what the Black Knight looked like in Mech Warrior 4 Black Knight expansion. However, I do have to criticize PGI a little bit about this. You took a mech that was going to be completely unique, not just for the Black Knights, but also for the heavies, uh, and the resistance heavies in general, and made them exactly alike now. Both the Grasshopper and the Black Knight have a ballistic slot in that left arm. The Grasshopper's running a Gauss rifle. The Black Knight is running an AC.5 there, but we all know that's going to get switched out for a Gauss rifle by the majority of people that play it. So there's no differentiating between the two now, except the Grasshopper is going to have jump jets and the Black Knight doesn't have jump jets. It's it's kind of boring. I really wish they had kept the second missile slot there instead. I think it would have given the partisan a lot more flavor and differentiation, but they bowed to community pressure, and oh well.
I think it's pretty all right. I'm very pro changes that they did to both mechs. Mainly the Black Knight, because like a lot of people suggested, or I shouldn't say suggested, but let's see if I can find it here real quick. Most of the Black Knights, I guess my biggest concern was that by keeping it pure energy, almost like it was with a couple missile hard points, it does nothing different than the other Black Knights.
Well, all the other Black Knights are all just entirely energy except for a couple AMS hard points. This one would
Yeah.
have at least been differentiated because it would have had missile hard points, and if people didn't utilize those, it was going to be mainly weaponry and the torsos being utilized. Throwing the ballistic slot in there just plays into the PPC Gauss meta, and I don't like the fact that they're basically enabling it. To continue further with a new variant of a mech that's already in the game, especially considering they've already enabled it with the Grasshopper. So
I guess that's a fair way to look at it. I guess I was kind of looking at it like I don't want at the end of the day I probably wasn't going to buy it just for missile hard points, because then I would just still equip it like I do my other Black Knights as pure energy. But with an actual ballistic hard point, I'm probably going to pick it up because it's, in my opinion, a little bit more versatile.
yeah, the Mauler, it should be noted that you need, if you want to see what the Mauler's camo pattern is going to look like, you have to actually look at the updated details page for the pre-order. It's going to use a color scheme much like the Mauler did in the animated series. The version they have up on the pre-order page doesn't show the the camo pattern, the hero camo pattern. So if you want to see it, you have to go to the updated details page.
And again, another nod to just something that some people wouldn't pick up on, but some will. Just little nods and tips of the hat like that. I guess it's kind of
Yeah,
it always makes me smile, I should say.
I have seen people complain about Grinner, the Wolfhound. The fact that it's really not any different than the other uh, Wolfhounds out there, other than the fact that it has an ECM
I would say
hard
that
point.
ECM though.
Yeah. Uh,
But I mean,
but
the same could almost
the
be
other
said with
complaint,
the Enforcer as well. Like the only thing it's got going for it is ECM.
yeah, the biggest complaint I've actually heard about Grinner is that people wanted it to be its Wolfhound 2C configuration, that using clan tech, which I completely understand why PGI is not doing that, because if you put a Inner
Oh,
Sphere hero as utilizing clan technology, that is the only Wolfhound you will ever see being run.
I was about to say, oh hey guys, want to make other Wolfhounds like inferior in every way?
Yeah,
Don't worry, we'll sell it to you.
yeah,
I
and
guess the only way I would be okay with potentially using clan tech, and this is very very iffy, was when we go, if we had the same argument going back to when clan heroes were going to be introduced, and you lock down basically the hard points and not being able to take out the engine and all that sort of stuff,
yeah,
which eventually turned out not to be accurate at all. But that was like our how would we, if we could, do clan heroes? And my suggestion was lock the engine in, allow them to change out the weapons in, but lock everything down so that the variant stays unique, a quote unquote hero.
yeah,
That would be the same thing. I would say if you wanted to give clan tech to Inner Sphere mechs, you would almost have to do the same thing. You would have to lock that engine in there. You would have to give it the pros, and you would have to give it the pros of having clan weapons, but the cons of like everything else,
yeah,
or else it's just going to wipe the floor with anything else that's it's supposed to
yeah.
be the same as, quote unquote.
So,
But things could get different.
well,
With
before we go to
before
there,
we go, okay,
we mentioned the Enforcer getting ECM. That was also changed because the Enforcer, the hero, is actually, there are two variants of it in the canon. Uh, they both basically are the same thing. The difference is that the first variant of it uses an early prototype Gauss rifle, and the second variant of it uses a fully uh, production level Gauss rifle, but extended range small and medium lasers, which we don't have AR medium and small lasers for the Inner Sphere yet. So I'm actually a little disappointed that with the announcement of these hero mechs that PGI did not use this as an opportunity to tease the new technology and equipment that's supposed to be coming this summer. These mechs are supposed to come out in June, and supposedly the new equipment's not supposed to come out till maybe July. But it would have been a good way to tease it and just hold off on releasing these maybe until that point. I think it would have given these a much bigger impact into the community. People would have it would have showcased it a lot better. But I think PGI basically missed an opportunity here. They could have really differentiated these and made them, people really stand up and take notice of them by doing that, and they didn't.
One of the things, again, I guess, somewhat congratulate PGI on is the pricing points.
Yes.
Are still pretty spot on. I think it's like 170 if you want the whole thing.
Yeah.
But the light mechs being $10, I think is fine. Medium is 15. Doing the $5 intervals and scaling it down so it's 10 instead of starting at 15.
Yeah.
Once again, I think following their new pricing strategy, quote unquote, is very, very effective, I think.
Yeah, and $25 for an assault mech is not too outrageous. So it's I'm thinking it's pretty fair in terms of pricing. Uh, you do get a mech bait mech bait comes with it, and you get a Molotov cocktail standing item, which that'll be interesting. Having basically a flaming bottle of gasoline in your cockpit. I don't know any mech wear in canon that would be okay with that, other than
Well, I
maybe
mean,
some of
Dark Age
the.
exists, so
We don't talk about that. So
I just want to tangent on that because I mean, there was that one novel in which they literally strapped every gun they could find in a town on the side of a mech and hooked it up with a string to all shoot at once. That was
yeah,
a
but
good
that
time.
thing was meant to be a one and done. That the Draconis Combine did the same thing with loader mechs during the Battle of Luthien. They basically made them look like battle mechs, stood them in a line so the smoke jaguars would charge right in, and then blew them up when the smoke
Yeah.
jaguars did that. And it, it's you don't realistically
weren't
do
they
that.
prop mechs or whatever for a film that was
No,
being made or something?
they were loader and industrial mechs that had basically sheet metal tacked onto them to make them look like real mechs. They utilized not only their technicians and their engineers, but they also did use a number of movie effects people to finalize the configuration, and they used their chain gain units, which basically recruit from the prisons and say, okay, if you go and do this, you don't get put to death in prison or don't live out the rest of your life here in prison. You get to fight and die gloriously for the Combine, and well, your chances of survival are really slim. But hey, it's better than prison, so have fun with that. They basically threw a bunch of those pilots into a number of these mechs just to make them look and function and add weight to the ploy.
I guess I'm thinking of Black Dragon. I think the novel. I think there was very specifically they tricked them using
Yeah,
prop mechs for
that's
a film.
yeah, they were going to be filming a
Yeah.
recreation of the Battle of Luthien, and they tricked a insurgent rebel unit using those prop mechs.
Yeah.
But moving on, we do know with the Inner Sphere on the announcement of these Inner Sphere Resistance heroes that there are supposed to be new clan heroes being announced next month. Or I'm sorry, I think it might actually be this month, March, because the Resistance heroes came. The announcement came at the end of February, so the new clan heroes are supposed to come, I believe, end of March. We're supposed to get an announcement about them. And so we've already gotten Basically, all of the invasion level uh, clan mechs have gotten their heroes, so the new ones will probably be that second wave. So look for the Mad Dog, look for the Hellbringer, look for the Gargoyle to get their heroes announced. I would assume they'll also move into Wave 3, so Executioner and uh, the like. They're getting their heroes announced, but I would not expect to see anything else other than them. Actually, I think if they do Wave 3, that'll cover all heroes for existing mechs.
Yes,
Because
I
after
believe
Wave
so.
3, we. Oh no, I take that back. After Wave 3, we have the Origin 2Cs. The
Yes,
the
right.
2C mechs, they would not have heroes, so I don't. So I'm unsure if those will get heroes announced as well. I'm thinking they will only go with the Wave 2 and the Wave 3 because that would put them at 9 mechs and include the Origin 2Cs would put them at 13. So I'm thinking they'll stick to the Omni mechs and finish them out first. Then uh, then we might see the 2Cs much later on. But I'm thinking it's just going to be the Wave 2 and Wave 3s for the newest clan heroes come this announced this March. Then we're supposed to also sometime this month get an announcement regarding the new equipment. Like uh, that's supposed to be coming. Basically, a preview of what's going to be added into the game this summer, along with 4 mechs that'll come this summer to Intersphere, to clans, mechs that basically help move the tech timeline into the 3060 era. Right now, we're still kind of stuck in the 3050, early 3050 era. So we talked a bit about that last podcast. So it'll be interesting to see once again what gets announced. Hopefully, we don't have to wait too long. Hopefully, that comes. I'm thinking an announcement about that will probably come. mm, I'm thinking maybe around the 22nd or so of March.
I think that's a because we're also expecting a new or isn't there a quote unquote mech pack coming out again soon? Some point that's new
That's supposed.
variants.
I believe that's what the mech pack is supposed to be.
Okay,
Is
that's what I was
because
thinking.
Javelin comes out in May. Resistance Intersphere Resistance heroes come out in June. The clan heroes will come. The new to be announced clan heroes will come out in July, and then the mech pack I believe is supposed to, according to the latest FAQ, is supposed to come out in August now.
Should be good
So
times. And I mean, of course, there's also hopefully going to be a roadmap coming up soon-ish, detailing some stuff. But I wonder if there's going to be anything on it with regards to the timeline advancement that we had, the slight timeline advancement that we had, with in terms of technology and that sort of stuff. And also, at this time, I want to predict. I'm going to call it now. One of the light mechs in the mech pack for the clans is going to be the Cougar. Just calling it best mech ever made. Just calling it. But yeah, I wonder again. This mech pack should be interesting.
and what mech is it supposed to be? I didn't actually hear you say a name.
Oh, I said Cougar.
Okay, Cougar. Uh, yeah, Cougar is a possibility, but
Because with the time move up, the Cougar would be entering into service.
yeah, but
2 years prior, I think.
the problem with the Cougar though is that it doesn't bring any new tech or equipment to the table.
No, and that's why I'm wondering if that's actually going to be a reason why with the mech pack they're going to announce it before the new technology is implemented.
I believe the new mech pack's supposed to bring mechs that actually showcase some of the new tech and equipment. At least that's what was somewhat teased.
Oh, then we're just going to get the XR variant.
Yeah. So, and I think that's why a lot of people are thinking things like the Blood Adder and
yeah. Oh no, it's kind of exciting in a way.
Yeah. Well, again, that's something we're all equally and anticipating. A lot of speculation going on in the forums about it. But I think that's pretty much all the news for MWO. The shout out to A.C.E.S. Remember, we are working on getting a new website up and running. We kind of hit a small hiccup in terms of building. We do have, Mr. Shannon, who is kindly taken it upon himself to do a lot of the work, is, working on it. I talked to him uh, Friday night. He is doing his very best. He is putting in a lot of time into it, and it's taking a little bit longer than initially thought, but when he's done, it should be exactly what we're hoping for. So, just bear with us. It is being worked on.
I think that's it for everything, really, for the past month or so.
Yeah.
Oh.
The changes to into faction warfare, the new system of playing the regular game modes, the quick play game modes in it. I have seen a lot of pushback against this. People, it seems, do not like it entirely, mainly due to the fact that people get stuck playing one game mode the entire night because of the lack of push and pull at times. So, don't know if we'll see any changes or tweaks come into that anytime soon or not, but hopefully we will. And if you aren't aware, and if you're at all interested, the Marauder 2C is coming out for MC tomorrow. Is coming out for MC soon, and the Linebacker is coming out for C-Bills. Actually, they came out today, the 7th. So the Marauder 2C is out for MC. The Linebacker is out for C-Bills. Feel free to go and pick those up if you are at all interested.
I would highly recommend picking up the Marauder. If you have the C-Bills, or I shouldn't say C, if you have the MC, the Marauder is very much a good pickup. But I think that's everything. So, any closing words or statements?
For the love of God, BGI, take care of the pinpoint accuracies. I'm honestly just hoping if I keep saying it enough, they'll eventually get a clue. But
and then you get to claim that you're the reason why.
Yeah,
you're
I
the
live
hero.
too far away for me to actually grab a soapbox and go stand on it in front of their offices. But
I got vacation coming up. Give me a sign, and I'll go do it.
That
I'll go stand in the mall and across from the PGI offices, and I'll stand there.
You think I can hire any of those crazy guys that usually held up signs "The end is nigh" to instead go hold up signs in front of PGI that say "Fix the pinpoint bullcrap"?
Nerf PPC. Possibly check Fiverr. They might be able to do it for you.
Yeah. You have Craigslist in Canada?
We have Kijiji. It's pretty much the same thing.
Okay, maybe I'll have to look into that.
All right, thank you everybody for listening to this episode of the Armored Combat Escalation Service podcast, the Junkyard podcast, something I haven't said in a while. And from both myself, Tierkron, and all of the members of A.C.E.S, thank you for listening, and see you on the battlefield, Mech Warriors.